Now listen, I don't need to tell you guys something you already know, okay? I feel like we're on the verge of World War III. And that's not a good thing, in any stretch of the imagination. But we take a look at the strength of our USA friends across the pond there. It kind of gives me a bit of hope that we might be alright if said World War III does break out, because it looks like it almost, some are actually saying it's already begun. What are your thoughts on what the hell is happening around the world? Like, what is going on, man? But today we're going to be checking out USA versus Russia military power 2024. If you're new here, my name is Adam, and hello. Hope you're having an absolutely beautiful day today, because it's all about to go tits up. It's not about to go tits up, but I tell you what is tits up. The current weather, it's freezing. It's so cold, bro. I have 2 fires on in here. 3 if you count the TV and the actual heating from those radiators back there. And I'm still cold. Anyway, my name's Adam. Great to meet you. You're not allowed to leave. You have to subscribe to the channel, or you get 2.5 months bad luck. Why would you risk it? You could break your leg. Anyway, let's do this.
The US and Russia are often compared as the world's top military powers. But let's be honest, Russia's military is falling apart. After 2.5 years of struggling in Ukraine, Russia's once feared force looks more like a relic of the past. So let's get to it. Does Russia even stand a chance against the US military?
But do you know what I want to understand, though? Why would they threaten? Because I feel like as of today, as of doing this video, I don't know when it's going to be uploaded, probably tonight. I feel like I've seen somewhere that your boy Putin has sent off a big international missile somewhere towards Ukraine. So why would they do this if their military is shit? That's what, I don't know whether they're just deluded, stupid, but I don't know, man. It scares me a little bit, because maybe they're not telling us everything. You know what I mean?
With outdated tanks blowing up left and right and poorly trained conscripts barely making it to the front lines,
that's good to see,
it's not
though.
looking good for Moscow. In this video, we'll show you why US air superiority is unmatched while Russia's jets and drones struggle to stay relevant, how the US tanks dominate the battlefield and Russian models crumble under fire, and why the US Navy's fleet dwarfs Russia's single broken aircraft carrier.
Hey, you guys are my friends, though, right? If a war does break out, the USA got my back. Is that true? Please tell me this.
Stay tuned as we break down why Russia's military is barely holding on and why the US remains the undisputed global power. Before we dive into tanks, jets, and ships, let's start with the basics. Manpower. Numbers don't tell the whole story, but they reveal a lot about each country's readiness. A spoiler, it's not just about how many soldiers they have. Let's break it down. On one side, we have the US with roughly 1.3 million active military personnel and about 2.8 million total, including the National Guard and Reserve, according to statistics from the Department of Defense. Similarly, the website Global Firepower lists Russia's current active military personnel at roughly 1.3 million. However, other sources suggest that the actual count is much lower, at about 1 million in total. The discrepancy in numbers can be explained by Russia's involvement in an ongoing war, where troop counts are often inconsistent, especially due to the recent military campaigns in Kursk and Donbass.
Yeah, but how? Okay, so here's the thing. Imagine Russia attacked America. What way would they shoot missiles? Do they shoot them east, or do they shoot them? I suppose they'd probably shoot them west, right? Because it's closer. But they would be coming from your east, because Russia's over here, and America's like here, right? So they'd shoot them this way. But, or do they send boats out around the world? Bro, I just need to build myself a fucking bunker, man, and lock myself in.
But let's take a look at some other population metrics to determine how exactly Russia and the US can get new soldiers. For example, total population numbers suggest that the US has a clear advantage, with roughly 330 million people in the US against some 140 million on Russia's side.
Wait,
the US
what?
simply has a larger pool of military-aged men and volunteer women to pull from if needed.
I thought
These
Russia had
numbers are
more than
further
that.
supported by Global Firepower's estimates of how many men reach military age each year. For the US, the number is estimated to be as high as 4.4 million, compared to Russia's
Every year?
1.2 million.
God
However,
damn.
pure population numbers aren't quite meaningful if people are not actually signing up for military service. And that's where we see the first major ideological difference between these two countries.
What is
On one
that?
side, the US military uses purely the volunteer or contract service model. That means that all recruits that go to the army have willingly signed up for military
They want to
service.
do it.
Based on statistics from the Department of Defense, there are roughly 150,000 recruits going through the US military's Basic Combat Training, Boot Camp or BTC. The DoD also suggests
What's that, every
there
year?
were roughly 200,000 applicants for BTC in the previous year,
God
meaning that
damn.
the majority of applicants were accepted into BTC. Out of those, it suggested that roughly 80 to 90% actually pass BCT
Yo,
and
that's
become
fucking
US military
high.
soldiers and go on to advanced training. However, the
Holy...
Department of Defense also suggests that 150,000 recruits each year is not enough to satisfy each of the branch's quotas. The DoD reports that the Army has shrunk by about 15% active members
Why
in the
is
past
that?
decade, alongside most other branches of the military.
Are people just not as good in the army anymore, or has the tests got harder, or is it a bit of both? I feel like it's probably the tests changing, or like, you know, the training's getting harder, or it's changing, and then that will lead to, you know, people not being up to scratch because of new high standards. What is it?
While the Navy was the only one to see growth at roughly 8% since 2011. Accordingly, it's estimated that the military frequently misses its recruitment targets by 10 to 15% per year, which is caused by lower application numbers, overall lower interest in serving in the Army, and young adults being unable to pass the health assessments to get into BCT. Despite those setbacks in acquiring new personnel,
why would they
the
not?
US military remains one of the largest in the world. Based on 2024, it's only behind India and China, which have over 2 million active members, but also have a population 4 times larger than the US. In the other corner, we have Russia, which uses a dual mandatory conscription plus contract soldier system. According to data published by the Russian Ministry of Defense, Russia is currently conscripting 150,000 soldiers.
That means that they basically just get told, yo, you're in the fucking army. All right, you're in. You don't have a choice. Get in there.
Every 6
or
months.
You go to jail.
Additionally, data from 2023 suggests that the Russian military signed roughly 490,000 military contracts for soldiers during that year. But that number is incredibly misleading. You see, during the war with Ukraine, the Russian military has lowered the minimum duration of a contract to as little as 6 months, which is aimed particularly at convicts and conscripts who are nearing the end of their mandatory military service.
Okay.
According to a report by Riddle, more than half of those
Did he say convicts?
contract to as little as 6 months, which is aimed particularly at convicts and conscripts who are nearing
Do they have criminals in their army? Well, I suppose they are fucking criminals, a lot of them, so it doesn't really make a
the
difference.
end of their mandatory military service. According to a report by Riddle, more than half of those contracts are either renewed contracts through the year or deaths being covered up by the Russian army in Ukraine. Riddle assumes that the actual number of new contracted soldiers during 2023 could be as low as 200,000. That still leaves Russia with quite a bit more growth than the US overall. And that's where the current war also comes in to throw yet another wrench in Russia's numbers. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Russia has suffered roughly 650,000 military casualties throughout the 31 months of warfare. Additionally, the rate at which Russia has been accumulating these casualties has only risen in the past few months.
God, I did not know that.
It's estimated that Russia has been losing roughly 1,000 soldiers per day since the beginning of 2024.
That's crazy.
In more recent months, however, that figure has jumped to 1,300 soldiers per day.
That's crazy.
According to those numbers, Russia barely has more soldiers coming into its military than it's been losing in the war. Some analysts...
So hold on, let me just, and I hope you guys don't take this the wrong way, right? But not everyone that's in the Russian army is bad then. It's the people who are conscripting people to forcefully join the army. So there could be normal civilians in Russia that have always lived there, and all of a sudden they're in the army because the law says you have to join it if we say you're fucking joining. That's like saying people in Germany during the World War II, World War I, blah, blah, blah. Everyone that lived in Germany was bad. They weren't though. Hitler was, and people who wanted to join Hitler's army, right? So this is kind of similar, right? In a way, Putin is, you know, a dickhead, evil person who's forcefully making people join the army. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, say I'm wrong, man, and we can chat. This is what this is. This is a chat, okay? So let me know what your thoughts are below. But surely not everybody, because like if it was, you know, volunteers that are, you know, putting themselves into the army by choice, then that's a whole different story. That means they're all fuckers. But because it's people who are willingly, or sorry, my bad. It's because it's people who are getting forced to join the army. That's a bit different, isn't it?
Suggest that if the war goes on for another year, Russia is well on track to suffer 1 million casualties
Which is
by mid-2025.
sad in a way.
There are also 2 other vital matters to discuss when it comes to troops: military training and contract durations. In the US, soldiers receive 10 weeks of basic training, followed by anywhere from 4 to 10 months of advanced individual training. Alternatively, officer academy tracks can last for another few years. After being recruited into the military, soldiers typically sign a 4-year contract with an option to renew it for another 4 years afterward. Russia has a wholly different system, largely due to its dual recruitment model. Both conscripts and new
Bro, what are we
contract
shitting
soldiers
at here?
typically receive at least 9 weeks of basic combat training, followed by anywhere between 3 to 6 months of individual training. However, mandatory military service lasts for a single year, while military contracts last for 2 years. all soldiers have the option to renew their military contracts, typically for up to 8 total years of military service. These factors are further complicated by the fact that the US and Russia conduct their basic training slightly differently. The US houses all recruits in 5 training centers across the country, ensuring that all new soldiers receive the same baseline training across their generation. On the other hand, Russian basic training heavily differs between one unit and the next, as it's up.
What says, is he checking to see if their balls are still there?
And Russian basic training heavily differs between one unit and the next, as it's up to each unit to conduct training methods and ensure their conscripts are trained. Add to that the Russian conscripts are generally considered second-class soldiers, since they won't be in the military for as long as contracted ones, and also are legally not allowed to be deployed abroad, and basic training can heavily differ between these two troop types. Since units typically have a mix of conscripts and contract soldiers, Russian training officers have a much harder time getting all their recruits trained up to be ready for regular military duties. Additionally, the rate at which the Russian army is losing soldiers also means that recruits are likely going through much shorter and more basic training regimes. According to an interview with a prisoner of war captured in the Kursk region, some conscripts are getting as little as 1 or 2 weeks of basic training before they are put on defensive posts. Finally, the state of the war has likely deteriorated the morale of the average Russian
that is
soldier,
crazy.
while the army is trying to get as many conscripts as possible by offering salaries in the range of triple or quadruple the national averages.
Oh my god, your boy Putin is paying his way, man. That is fucking pathetic. So these people who are getting conscripted, getting forced to join, are getting 2 weeks maximum of training, and then they're getting a gun and getting sent in. Oh my god, that is wild.
Chances are many contract soldiers either end up dying or leaving the army when their first contract ends. Considering the high turnaround of Russian soldiers, it's highly unlikely that the Russian officers can maintain a satisfactory level of training across all its units. This isn't even a particularly new problem either. A 2023 report by the Center for Naval Analyses, the CNA, suggests that 2016 saw high-ranking naval fleet officers dismissed for serious omissions in the organization of combat preparation.
The hell does that mean?
Distortions of the real state of affairs in reports to the defense minister. In other words, high-ranking officers have been skirting the rules for training their recruits for practically a decade now, and they've misrepresented actual combat readiness to the higher echelons of the Russian military.
Has Russia always been just a bastard? You know, just as Russia, I feel like Russia's always been a bit of a, excuse my French, cunt. Have they ever been nice to us or not?
Strikers can be equipped with an incredible array of technology and gear, allowing the US military to create the perfect answer to whatever the enemy forces can throw their way.
Jesus.
Strikers have been used as missile carriers, support vehicles, medical transport, engineer squad vehicles, mobile command units, mortar carriers, and even biological, chemical, and nuclear warfare support. To that end, it's not surprising that the US would have an overwhelming advantage on the ground.
See, when you start talking biological words, scares the shit out of me. Because there's fuck all you can do. If someone hits you with a nuke, you're dead, man. Even if your place could get hit with a big bomb that does a massive explosion, does loads of damage structurally, fucking wrecks your house. But if a nuke goes down, your ass is getting fucking fried.
At least as far as vehicles are concerned. But a fight between the US and Russia would likely start with long-range artillery and air-to-air combat. So let's compare some of these aspects of each country's military. First up, it's the artillery potential of both countries. On paper, Russia has a range artillery and air-to-air combat. So let's compare some of these aspects of each country's military.
Look at the size of the bullet that falls out of this fucking cannon.
First up, it's the artillery potential of both countries. On paper, Russia has a definitive numerical advantage with roughly 6,000.
What's that shooting at? Why did that look like there was a UFO in the sky there?
Advantage with
what is that? Bro, that was not there 1 second ago.
Advantage with roughly 6,200 pieces of self-propelled artillery, compared to the US having 1,600, as well as over 8,000.
He's shooting the fucking clouds. There's no way that's aiming at something. There's no computer on it. So what are we aiming at here? If I'm shooting that in the sky, am I just hoping it's going to land on someone's head, or what the f is going on here?
In fact, Russia is widely considered to have the largest artillery arsenal in the world. But again, it's not just about pure numbers. However, what Russia has managed to do falls nothing short of a miracle for an economy of its size. While Russia still uses some of the oldest Soviet-era self-propelled artillery models with minor technological upgrades, the country's reliance on quantity over quality is definitely paying off. NATO intelligence suggests that not only does Russia have an overwhelming advantage when it comes to artillery vehicles and guns, but the country is also outproducing both the US and Europe. NATO estimates that Russia produces as many as 3 million artillery shells per year, while the US and Europe have been sending only about 1.2 million to Ukraine.
Nah, this doesn't matter though. This does not matter, man. They can be making 5 million because all we need to do is hit them one at the place where they get made. And now they make none.
Not diminish their own supplies. Russia's use of relatively old artillery pieces is one of the few aspects where focusing on quantity over quality gives it an advantage. For example, one of the more modern weapons, the M109A6, has a fire rate of 1 round every 3 minutes. Its upgrade, the M109A7, uses an autoloader to drive the firing rate up to 1 a minute, or achieve a burst of 4 rounds in a minute. By comparison, some of Russia's oldest models, the 2S3s, fire 2 to 3 rounds per minute.
Look how old they look.
And Russia wasn't slacking on improving its artillery. The 2S19 can fire at a rate between 5 and 7 rounds per minute, easily outstripping the M109s.
Jeez.
More recent variants of the 2S line include the GLONASS-powered targeting system and an improved firing rate with autoloading.
Can you imagine getting shot by one of them?
Suggested that the war in Ukraine is largely a stalemate due to Russia being able to abuse its artillery advantage. Considering that the US also has a smaller artillery arsenal and doesn't produce as many shells per month, long-range artillery strikes between the countries would end up in Russia's favor if there weren't any extenuating factors. Luckily for the US, those extenuating factors are its air force, drones, and more advanced long-range missile arsenals. According to the US Air Force statistics, the country has access to 5,500 military airplanes across various functions and models. Perhaps the most obvious is the country's fleet of roughly 2,900 fighter and multi-role jets, with the oldest models being the lauded F-15s and F-16s.
How class are they looking though?
Making waves in Ukraine as the most modern jet in the country. On the other side is Russia, with an air fleet of 809 fighter and multi-role jets. The most obvious comparisons can be made between the F-16s, of which the US has roughly 880, and Russia's Sukhoi Su-34s, numbering around 125.
Easy.
According to a report by National Interest, the Su-34s are more of an analog to the F-15E, but the jet's upgraded missile system and radar can allow it to contest F-16s in both mid and close combat scenarios.
Oh shit.
In simulated fights, both planes typically match up evenly.
Do these big... Where's the Gatling gun? I feel like I just asked a really stupid question. What is a Gatling gun? Man, I feel like hold on, what is a Gatling gun? I feel like I've got it wrong. Not a Gatling gun, chat. Why did I think that was on the jets? Nah, that wouldn't work. I just meant like, you know, like a fucking big minigun where the you know what I mean? The driver can shoot himself. Where's that come out of? Or do we only have these rockets and that's it? Or is that it? I feel like that might be it right there. So someone let me know before my head explodes.
Resulting in mutual destruction. However, the F-16s are not generally used as air-to-air superiority aircraft, being primarily designed to carry air-to-surface missiles instead. The Su-35s, meanwhile, are more dedicated flanker-type aircraft with an armament of cruise missiles. But the comparison starts going in favor of the US Air Force by virtue of F-22s and F-35s, both much more modernized and upgraded versions of the F-15s and 16s.
Fuck.
If you compare those models against the Su-35s, the Russian aircraft will be at a definitive disadvantage. Furthermore, the US has roughly 550 F-35s in various designs and 185 F-22s, which means they've got Russia's most modern aircraft heavily outnumbered. The sheer scale at which the US Air Force could dominate the sky over Russia would also allow the US aircraft to be used more offensively. These include the country's arsenal of over 150 bombers compared to Russia's 120. A theoretical scenario where both countries approach combat with air superiority in mind would likely see Russia's key military facilities bombed from the air,
outdated,
while
it's
the US Air Force
unbelievable.
keeps the sky clear of Russian defenders. The second vital aircraft combat with air superiority.
Look at Russia's fucking plane, man. Look at their bomber. That genuine. I'm going to Manchester in a couple of weeks, chat, over to England, and this is what my plane looks like. Fucking propeller blades compared to this monster.
In mind, would likely see Russia's key military facilities bombed from the air, while the US Air Force keeps the sky clear of Russian defenders. The second vital aircraft category is helicopters, where the US leads once again with roughly 5,700 compared to Russia's 1,600. This will give the US military more opportunity to shuttle troops around and open more fronts, where the Russians will be forced to defend themselves. The US Air Force
Wait a
also
minute.
has a high defend themselves.
Why are they jumping out attached to ropes? What's going on here? Why have they got ropes attached?
US Air Force also has a higher operational capacity when it comes to training its pilots. The country uses over 2,600 trainer aircraft
What
compared
is
to
going on?
Russia's
Oh, there we go.
550. This allows US troops to be more experienced with modern combat tactics, as well as work with aircraft that have lower flight hours logged, which means that the US is not putting as much wear and tear on its aircraft to deliver a steady stream of experienced personnel to the front lines. All these factors mean that the US Air Force rightfully takes first place in the world. But modern air combat isn't only decided by manned aircraft.
This is the future.
Unmanned combat aerial vehicles, also
This is the
known as
future.
UCAVs, or drones.
And then you know what's next? Robots. Elon Musk is about to give a patent, it's a complete guess, to the US government military on how to make the robots that he's created to use for war. It's Terminator all over, chat.
Drones are likely going to
Terminator!
be the defining factors of future wars between modern countries, if they even get there. In some capacities, drones have seen extensive use in the war in Ukraine. However, most of these drones were repurposed commercial drones with ordnance strapped onto them, rather than dedicated military drones that the US and Russia could possibly use. Of course, Ukraine has been building up its local UCAV industry as well, but the more common makeshift drones are a big part of how the country has been able to repel.
I'm not, this is Russia, man. My guy is strapping up a UAV drone thing. Look, bro, where is my guy? Is he in his garage? What the fuck is going on here, bro? Is that a rabbit cage? Man got fucking a jar of fruit.
Russia's tanks and artillery for so long. Going back to the US and Russian drones though, we once again see a clear advantage for the US due to the country having some of the most advanced models in the world.
I wonder
the clear
why.
leader is the General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper,
Roswell.
which the US Air Force is estimated to have over 200.
We got that alien technology.
Each of these drones costs a staggering $32 million. Unlike kamikaze drones that are being used in Ukraine or recon and intelligence gathering drones that were seen before, the MQ-9 Reaper, sometimes dubbed the Predator B, is a multi-purpose hunter-killer drone.
Jesus
the drone
Christ.
has a range of over 1,000 miles, can stay in the air for up to 14 hours when fully loaded, or over 40 hours with a partial load and added fuel tanks, and carries up to 3,000 pounds of missiles, which can be a combination of air-to-surface or air-to-air ordnance depending on the mission at hand. The only Russian counterpart to the Predator is the Kronstadt Orion, of which Russia has 48, but has barely used during its offensive missions in Ukraine. A big part of that is the fact that Ukraine has quickly adopted layered anti-air defenses, which drastically reduce the drone's survivability.
What the
cheaper
hell
and
is
more
that?
numerous converted commercial drones are much more disposable for both countries involved. Regardless, the US has a much higher ceiling when it comes to drone warfare, and the country's enormous budget means that it can rapidly adopt the same drone-based style seen in Ukraine and put it to good use. Additionally, the US Air Force is supported by a fleet of aircraft carriers more numerous than the rest of the world combined. The US Navy operates a staggering 11 aircraft carriers, 10 Nimitz-class and the more modern USS Gerald R. Ford-class carrier, with an additional order of 4 more Ford-class carriers on the way.
Jesus.
By comparison, Russia only has one carrier, which hasn't even been operational for 6 years as it's undergoing repairs and upgrades that keep getting pushed back. This allows the US...
hold on a minute. They got one boat. They got one fucking boat. Why don't we just sink it? They're already doing repairs. Hit it with a fucking bomb, mate. Get that thing sunk. Get it sunk. In other news, just to let you guys know, if you've watched this far, you might actually like the content I produce. I stream on Twitch. I stream there. I just said that. You know, I'm not even going to try and sell it. If you want to go and follow, there's a link in the pinned comment. It's a good laugh over there. We'll have fun, play games, react to shit. Yeah.
Military to create significant pressure on its adversary by approaching its targets from the sea and cutting off vital trade routes that could practically isolate countries that rely on naval trade, such as China.
I was literally just about to say, oh my god, I feel like we need to worry about the Chinese. You just don't know what the fuck they're at over there, man. You know what I mean?
USS Ford is considered the pinnacle of modern aircraft carrier design, and China's attempts to make a comparable model seem to have failed miserably so far.
What the hell's...
Additionally, the US Navy commands...
What was going on with that?
...power and clearing out enemy ships and submarines, so the US has a clear edge in operational capacity. The Russian Navy is also more scattered with Arctic, Baltic, and Black Sea fleets. The distance between these fleets makes each of them less of a threat. Furthermore, 2 of those fleets, the Baltic and the Black Sea, are practically fenced in by NATO countries, making them far less potent. Of course, it bears mentioning how both countries are funding their militaries, as that can indicate their long-term growth potential. The US is by far the biggest spender, providing more funds for its military than the next 10 national militaries combined. Its military budget for
I ain't gonna lie, guys, I actually tried to rewind that to see what the fuck that boat was doing, and I think I actually skipped forward.
the USS Ford is considered the pinnacle
Is that what it looks like when it's turning, man? Why the fuck's it like that?
modern aircraft carrier design, and China's attempts to make a comparable model seem to have failed
Jesus.
miserably so far. Additionally, the US Navy commands national militaries combined. Its military budget for 2024 is roughly $831 billion, compared to $109 billion that the Russian government sequestered for its military. The numbers start to look even starker for Russia when you realize that the US only uses about 3.4% of its GDP on military, while Russia's military spending for 2024 is projected to be approximately 7.1% of its GDP. And recent reports even indicate that military spending will account for up to 35% of total government spending this year. This means that if push comes to shove, the US probably has more funds to inject into its military than Russia does. Add to the fact that the Russian economy has been battered by international sanctions for over 2 years, and the country's vital oil refineries being taken out by Ukraine, and Russia's economy is unlikely to be able to support this level of military spending for the long haul while still being in active war. All these aspects point to the US having an overwhelming military advantage across most
Go
fields of war.
boys!
However, these only really make a big impact if the countries end up in conflict against nations or coalitions that don't have nuclear weapons. Both the US and Russia have roughly the same number of nuclear warheads, 5,400
How do they
total
know
warheads
that?
and around 1,700 deployed ones. Why does this matter? Russia's nuclear weapons policy, although defensive, is also pretty trigger-happy. Under President Vladimir Putin and his new proposed rules, Russia states it has the right to launch nuclear weapons as soon as a nuclear-capable country starts directly working against Russia's interests.
Oh, that's kind of scary, man. Because surely already America giving weapons to Ukraine is exactly that. So Putin's now made up a new rule where if anybody goes against Ukraine's or Russia's interests in terms of war, the country has the right to launch nukes. You know what I think we should do? Just get it done. Don't tell anyone. Just send 55 nukes over to Russia and just clean it off the fucking map. Sort it out.
And one of those interests has so far been its special military operation in Ukraine. Therefore, in a hypothetical scenario where the US and Russia actually go to war against one another, there's a remote but non-zero possibility that Russia would
Hey, bro, hold on a minute. No, America shoots from the east. Why not shoot this way? Surely it's closer. Or maybe it's not, is it? Boom, boom. Well, that's the... Okay, so it has to go... Never mind. Yeah. I'm right... Bro, I'm right there. Like, hold on a minute. I'm literally right there in the middle. Why you gotta shoot them over my head, bro? Can we just maybe go over Africa or something?
Scenario where the US and Russia actually go to war against one another, there's a
Right
remote
over my
but
head!
non-zero possibility that Russia would opt for mutually assured destruction via nuclear warfare. And the consequences of this war would be catastrophic for pretty much everyone involved,
True.
directly or indirectly. A simulation by the Future of Life Institute shows that no matter which country fires the first shot, the other one can reciprocate by at most a 10-minute delay, considering the
Right, right, so obviously we're friends. So Russia start doing this, the UK opens up their nukes, right? We open up our nukes and start sending them in. I get on my dad's boat and I head north to Iceland and I chill here. That is Iceland, isn't it? Greenland, maybe? I head out. I'm heading out. Either way. What is this? What's this? North Pole? What is this? What happened here? Why is there so many... What's going on?
sheer number of available nuclear warheads, some of which are hydrogen rather than atomic bombs, it's likely that most of the northern hemisphere gets bombed back into the Stone Age. The resulting explosions would create a huge cloud of nuclear fallout that will block out the sun over the hemisphere, causing temperature drops of 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Mass agriculture would become little more than...
Yo, hold on a minute. Temperature drops by 20 degrees at least. Brother, it's 3 degrees here at the minute and it feels like -4. So you're telling me I'm gonna have to live in -24? Nuke me.
The simulations also estimate 5 billion, that's billion with a B, casualties from explosions, radiation exposure, and widespread famine. So where does that leave us? The
Dead,
US
that's where it
reigns
leaves us.
supreme as the world's best and most technologically advanced military in the world. Russia is somewhere around the top 5, but its precise ranking is pretty much impossible to determine, considering the sheer losses it accrued over the past 31 months of war. Additionally, Russia has put significant effort into rebuilding its military, so it's uncertain how that will scale into a long-term military presence. In the end, the two countries are unlikely to engage in meaningful and direct war against one another, as the threat of the use of nuclear weapons is too high to ignore, so long as Putin is in charge of Russia.
Yeah, but look at his face, so he's got fucking devil horns on him, man. Anyway, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this whole situation, ladies and gentlemen? Let me know in the comments box down below. If you guys enjoyed the video today, please leave a like and make sure to subscribe. Remember, I said about 2.5 months bad luck. That was not a lie or a joke. It was serious. I said you could break your leg. You could, and that wouldn't be nice. So make sure to subscribe and like, or your leg will break. Goodbye.